Hey guys, I'm Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. I start every show basically some version of that same thing. However, today is different. I am not here. This is a pre-recorded show. We don't try to pull the wool over your eyes about stuff like this. We try to be honest. I am taking a little bit of vacation this week, but we have shows each and every day. You may notice I'm wearing my Own the East t-shirt. We're doing the Own the East season preview as a part of our vacations week's worth of shows. They'll be a little bit shorter, but fun, I think. John Stinchcomb on 4 of the days this week, looking at various position groups for UGA. Jeff Sintel coming up in his customary spot on Friday. So I think it's going to be a really good week. I'm glad to have you as a part of it. I want to begin with this. History can be made. You guys remember Gorilla Monsoon, WWF, old school days? History being made here. We may make some history around Georgia football this season. We'll tell you about that coming up. It's DawgNation Daily, daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, and it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, viewed to be the best.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
You know, there's something I look forward to each and every year. This is the 4th year we've done this. It's called the Own the East season preview series. I told our video audience this a moment ago. I'll say it again here for those of you listening on the podcast. This is not live this week. We almost always, if you listen to the podcast, we almost always record the show the day that we debut it. This is the one kind of week out of the year where we do things a little bit differently, where I'm taking some time off, going to spend some time with my family, and still wanted to bring you some content, and we wanted to do this week's worth of our program, DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door, as a part of the Own the East season preview series. Now, normally in the past, the Own the East has been kind of a separate thing, you know, kind of off to itself, not officially a part of DawgNation Daily. This year I said, hey, can we do this as a part of DawgNation Daily? It's something I really enjoy doing. We've done it in a lot of different iterations over the years. Would it be okay to do this as a part of our show? I was given the okay to do that. And let me remind you, by the way, if you're watching on video, I'm wearing my Own the East t-shirt. This is first made up a couple of years ago, and I thought, what better way to kind of celebrate the fact that Georgia's trying to own the East now for a 4th straight year? What would be better than celebrating that by actually wearing the Own the East t-shirt here on the broadcast? I don't typically wear t-shirts, but today I am wearing this one. I like to wear the DawgNation t-shirts. You see me wear Gator Hater, things like that from time to time. And when we first started talking about this, one of the things that we discussed, I'm talking about years ago, when I said, hey, Georgia's job is to own the East. What that meant was not just win the division, because Georgia had done that plenty, but the first step towards being the kind of program that Georgia wants to be, the kind of program that competes regularly for national championships, wins national championships. The first step towards a lot of that kind of stuff was going to be about winning the division, and not just winning it a year, winning it every so often, but making it a regular occurrence. Think about, and I don't, typically make these kinds of comparisons favorably, but think about the New England Patriots for a moment. They play in the AFC East in the NFL. Patriots have won the East, gosh, I don't know how many years in a row, but it seems like forever. They have literally owned their division, and success at the AFC Championship game level, moving on to the Super Bowl, winning a lot of Super Bowls. The first step towards that is everything that comes your way when you make winning your division a regular occurrence. And for Georgia, they've got a chance to do that now for a 4th straight year. The vision that we initially had for Own the East of, hey, make this division your birthright. Make this division the kind of thing that you expect to get every single year. For the last 3 years, that's kind of what Georgia has done. And as we think about this again for this upcoming year, Georgia coach Kirby Smart, if he were sitting here with us right now, would remind us that he's worried about what he himself, his team, is doing. He's not going to be worried about Florida and whatever hype might exist about them, or the fact that Jeremy Pruitt may be trying to build something up at Tennessee, or the fact that Georgia needs to get some revenge against South Carolina. As Georgia tries to own the East now for a 4th straight year, the teams that try to stand in the way of Georgia in that regard aren't of much concern to Smart. How do I know that? Because a couple of years ago, leading into the season, Smart essentially said the same thing. Here's what he said way back then.
I look at it just like I did last year. I mean, we got to beat them. The names and faces may change, but the places are all the same. So, I mean, I'm not concerned with what they're doing, and they're not probably concerned with what we're doing. We're obviously trying to develop a team that believes in its self-confidence, but I don't concern myself with what those guys are doing.
So Smart says that prior to the 2018 season. We got to beat them. I don't care what they're saying about Florida because, believe it or not, even way back then, there was hype about Dan Mullen in Florida or anybody else in the SEC East. He's saying, we don't need to worry about that. We just got to go out there and beat them. Well, guess what? Georgia did that in 2018, much the same way it had in 2017. And in 2019, it at least beat enough of them to win the division once again. And now it has a chance to do that all over again. And let me tell you why that matters. Because I do realize that when I'm sitting here with an Own the East t-shirt on, talking about winning the division, there's going to be a lot of Georgia fans, not just critics, naysayers outside the bubble of DawgNation, but a lot of Georgia fans who say, BA, it's time to stop talking about winning the division. It's time to talk about winning a national championship, winning maybe more than one national championship. And I'll grant you that. I'm as anxious to see that occur as anybody else is. But let me for a couple of minutes try to sell you on the idea of why winning the division 4 years in a row, if that is indeed what takes place for Georgia this season, would really matter and should really matter to UGA fans. It just hasn't happened that much in SEC history. And by doing that this year, Georgia has a chance to really poke at the side of some of its rivals here a little bit. Because for whatever reason, there are a lot of programs out there that just seemingly take a lot of interest in what Kirby Smart is doing in Georgia. And there's this strong push to diminish it and suggest that it's less than what maybe Georgia fans think it is. For instance, for Alabama, for whatever reason, has always had just a little bit of a thing for Kirby ever since Kirby left as the architect of the defenses that won national championships there years and years and years. Since leaving there, Alabama fans have enjoyed the idea of trying to take Kirby down a peg, or at least seeing the reputation of Kirby not as fully enhanced as it otherwise maybe has a chance to be. Alabama fans don't want good things for Kirby Smart, in other words. But if Smart wins this division, his first, winning the division in 4 of his first 5 years as a Georgia coach, 4 consecutive years, it'd be fair to point out Nick Saban hasn't won the SEC West 3 straight years. And yes, I know he's won national championships and things like that. I'm not saying winning the East 4 years in a row is better than that. I'm saying it's not nothing. And it would be evidence of a coach still in the early stages of his development as a leader, still in the early stages of his time as a head coach, to win the division 4 years in a row. For the Alabama fans who want to say that Kirby ain't nothing and he's never going to be, what Nick Saban would be, this would be a data point that suggests that Kirby Smart is still very much on an upward trajectory. And by winning the division, putting yourself in the SEC championship, putting yourself in the contention of the college football playoff, you are laying the groundwork for that success to take place. So if you're not all that jazzed with the idea of winning the SEC East 4 years in a row, the fact that Nick Saban hasn't done it, the fact that Alabama as a program hasn't done it, all the more reason why Georgia fans could maybe, enjoy that moment as Kirby and UGA try to do something the Crimson Tide, even the Crimson Tide of Nick Saban, has never done before. But wait, that's not all. It's also a chance to match the feat put together by Steve Spurrier at Florida back in the mid-'90s. The only team thus far from either division, SEC East or West, to win an SEC division 4 years in a row was the Florida teams in the mid-'90s. Those of us who were alive back then obviously have miserable, horrible memories of that, but a measure of revenge for Georgia fans from that time would be to see Kirby go out and do that this year. Now, can you imagine the scenario for a moment? Now, listen, of course I know there's a chance that none of these games get played for this particular week, and I enjoy my vacation. Can we just, act like for right now that all the games are set to take place? I believe there's reason for more optimism than not, but just for now, for the sake of conversation, let's say the games take place. And even if the games do take place, I completely realize there's a really good chance it's far reduced capacity in terms of fans in the stadium. But just for the sake of conversation, let's say that the cocktail party in Jacksonville, scheduled for Halloween, is something that looked like a typical Georgia-Florida game. All those fans in the stadium, Florida fans have been waiting for months and months and months to prove that this really is the breakout year for Dan Mullen. This is the year that Dan Mullen proves what kind of coach he is, superior game coach, all the stuff that's been said. Can you imagine if those same Florida fans had to endure another loss to the Dogs? And this one's significant in that it puts Kirby Smart into a category that only their beloved Steve Spurrier is in, as a coach that's now won the division 4 years in a row. As I said before, another Georgia win against Florida this season would matter. It makes it very hard to make the argument in the future for Gators fans. It doesn't really matter that Mullen's not a great recruiter because he's a better game coach than Kirby. My gosh, if Kirby drubs him every year in head-to-head matchups, at a certain point in time, you got to stop saying that. And for the Florida fans who want to say that the Georgia fans are living in ancient history and overstating the prestige of the program, if Kirby Smart matched a Steve Spurrier feat this year, becomes a little harder to make that case. And all of a sudden it seems like Florida, who's trying to hold on to the glory days for a Steve Spurrier era that truly was a long time ago, and an Urban Meyer era that's getting longer and longer by the moment. Kids who are seniors in high school right now about to sign their letters of intent, they're not even old enough to remember the last Florida National Championship, one decade plus ago with Urban Meyer as the coach. There's a lot of history at stake for Georgia this year. It's a chance to win the division for the 4th consecutive year, truly owning the East, as we've talked about. And if that happens, Alabama fans won't be happy, Florida fans won't be happy, and the unhappiness of those fan bases is plenty of enough reason for me to want to see it happen. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. We are, normally I say live. We're not live. We're pre-recording this. We're not going to try to pull the wool over your eyes about that, but we are available Facebook and YouTube, podcast. Taking a break this week on radio. Looking forward to be back on 960 The Ref again next week, and it's all made possible by our friends at Pella Window and Door of Georgia, who can help equip your house with energy-efficient windows and doors. That's important to keep air conditioning on the inside. It improves the curb appeal of your house, which potentially could impact the resale value, put you more money in your pocket. All the reasons why you want to talk to someone from Pella Window and Door of Georgia, either in person or through the magic of video teleconference, much the same way many of you are watching this show right now. Let me give you a couple ways to get in touch. You can go to the website pellabranch.com. That's pellabranch.com. Or give them a call in their Dunwoody showroom, 404-445-2979. The number, once again, 404-445-2979. Pella Window and Door of Georgia is viewed to be the best. They can give you all the information you need, all the options, and really the reason why that you ought to make the decision to upgrade your home with those energy-efficient windows and doors that Pella Window and Door of Georgia can provide. Find them online, as I said, pellabranch.com, or call them 404-445-2979. All right, let me give you a little bit of an idea of what it's going to be like here in the next few days. It is our Own the East week as we look at the ways in which that Georgia can own the East for a 4th straight year, accomplishing a pretty historic feat there in that regard. So it'll also include various looks at some of the rivals that Georgia will play, both in its division, and we'll finish the week looking at the rest of the SEC. We did Florida last Thursday, did Tennessee on Friday. We'll pick up with the SEC East again today with a deeper look at South Carolina in just a moment. As I said before, that's a revenge game for UGA this year. Given the fact the Gamecocks won in Athens last year, you better believe that Georgia will have that game on its mind when it goes to Columbia later on this season. We're also going to have John Stinchcomb several times this week as a part of our Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update per usual here on this Monday, but then also briefly with us on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday as well. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the position groups. We're not going to do offensive line because John and I have talked offensive line stuff a good bit. So we're not going to zero in on that position group, at least for this particular week. I'm sure we'll do more of that in the weeks to come. It's going to be quarterbacks here today in a moment, running backs tomorrow. It'll be wide receivers later in the week, and we'll look at the defense kind of in broad terms also there as well. And then we'll have Jeff Sintel as per usual on Friday. So it's a busy week of vacation shows for us. Let me say one thing about quarterbacks before we get there. So it's obviously a possibility that the Georgia schedule here in 2020, assuming it's even played, but clearly is a factor you got to consider right now. But if it is played, it could look very, very different. There's a chance that the Week 1 game against Virginia may not happen for reasons you're fully aware of. Let's think for a moment about what would happen if the Georgia-Alabama game was actually Georgia's first game. There's a chance that Georgia and Alabama could actually be moved around. There are so many different contingencies that could potentially be considered for the upcoming schedule. We can't obviously factor in all those things right now, so let's think about the game being played as scheduled, and let's assume for a moment that non-conference games, at least at the beginning of the year, do kind of get whittled away. There's a chance that Georgia could open in Tuscaloosa against Alabama the first game of the season. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Whether it's the very first game or just among the first game Georgia plays, the fact that Alabama may not quite be sure of who Georgia's starting quarterback is going to be could potentially work to the advantage of UGA, because potentially the two guys that I assume are the most likely to compete for that job are just so different. JT Daniels is a little bit more of a traditional drop back guy. Jamie Newman, while an accomplished passer in his own right, is also plenty athletic as well. I predicted that Newman will win the job, but there's a great chance that I'm wrong about that. It's eventually Daniels that emerges. But for Alabama, the potential of having to deal with a combination of the two, a lot more of one than the other, the differences in the Todd Monken offense, those two quarterbacks could potentially spark when they're in the game. I would say that's a pretty stiff challenge for Alabama to deal with here very early in the year. and for a Georgia defense that may be ahead of the Alabama defense also early in the season because of just how much that Georgia brings back, the element of mystery and intrigue that game could offer, that Georgia could present to the Crimson Tide, could be a real key to winning that game. So there's obviously some stress among UGA fans about how the quarterback battle is going to play out, but at least keep this in your back pocket. The fact that none of us know right now also means that Alabama doesn't know either. And that element of surprise may just work to Georgia's advantage when those two teams get together come September. It's a busy edition of us today on DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, as a part of our Own the East season preview. Let's do more on quarterbacks right now, including how Dwan Mathis, Carson Beck fit into this conversation. Let's talk to John Stinchcomb right now as a part of a Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
And here what is a vacation week for me on DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door. Let's do a Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update with John Stinchcomb. Now, I'll give you an update on this. John, good enough to join us for a portion of a lot of our shows here this week. This is the only one that will kind of officially brand as a DawgNation Insider Update, I should say a Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update, but John, good enough to share some of his thoughts in the upcoming season. So, John, as per usual, we appreciate you doing that, and thanks for being a part of what we're doing here on the show today.
Well, always a pleasure talking about Georgia football. What better way to spend your time?
No doubt about that. And we're going to begin. We're kind of doing an Own the East season preview this week. This is something we've kind of done a lot over the years around DawgNation. This is our first time doing this within DawgNation Daily, but fun nonetheless. And you know, John, I know you and I talked about this, a little bit over the course of the last couple of weeks. We now know that JT Daniels is eligible. You put him into that discussion involving Jamie Newman and guys who've already been here, guys like Dwan Mathis, Carson Beck. I guess first and foremost, when I think about that quarterback situation for Georgia, I think about something that's certainly way more good than bad. Some anxiety maybe about how all this plays out, but it's never a bad thing to have a lot of options, right?
I love it. I think, the old adage of iron sharpens iron, the better competition you have in a room, the better the product's going to be when you finally get there on Saturday. So I think it's exciting to have such good talent in one place, and I look forward to seeing how it all plays out.
I have said before that while I'm also really curious about how it all plays out, if you want to give opinions, which I kind of do for a living, my opinion is this will be a quarterback battle that's more likely than not to be won by Jamie Newman. And my argument on this has always been, if you listen to all the things that have been said about Newman during the offseason, they can't all be wrong, I would assume. And it's important to note that a lot of this around Newman predates his decision to come to Georgia. In other words, this isn't just the typical UGA quarterback hype. That's not to disregard JT Daniels, who I would put the other most likely quarterback in this conversation to be. But I'm not going to run away from some of the things that I've said about Jamie Newman simply on the fact that JT Daniels is now here. Now that we know that Daniels is officially a part of this competition for 2020, where do you put, I guess, the odds of Newman or Daniels eventually emerging here?
Well, I'm with you in thinking that Newman is the heavy odds-on favorite. He's had more experience. He's coming off a good 2019 year, and he's that veteran that is in the NFL discussion as a true contender to be one of those draft picks come that 2021 draft. So I think he's the favorite. I think it also helps that you've got good options. I like JT Daniel. I've been able to see his game a little bit more since he signed, and there's a reason why he was a 5-star coming out. So he's got the big arm, but honestly, maybe this is just a little bias on my part, but I'm kind of excited to see a dual-threat quarterback wearing red and black and silver breeches take the field and what that might really look like for this Georgia offense.
I know what you mean about that. I think that's really well said. Hey, let me remind you, it's a Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update. Go to marlowstavern.com. Taverns are open. You can find out about the one right there in your neighborhood. Stop by and enjoy some of that chef-inspired food, that house-made magic that makes Marlowe's Tavern famous. Or if you still want some to-go food, if that's what you feel comfortable doing right now, Marlowe's Tavern's still taking great care of you when it comes to to-go orders as well. So find out more about that online at marlowstavern.com. John, the last thing for you on the subject of quarterbacks here for a moment. So Obviously, a lot of attention will be paid to Daniels now that he's eligible. You and I have talked a lot about Jamie Newman here, have for many, many weeks. What would be your message to Dwan Mathis, who many Georgia players have said some good things about on social media? Carson Beck, who seems to have his own fans as well, with good reason. For guys like that who may be forced to wait a little bit, or certainly feel like they're part of a quarterback competition in which some other guys may have a bit of an edge because of experience, what would be your message to Mathis right now, and to Beck there as well?
Well, compete your tail off. I mean, it's the message at every position. Just because on paper there are some other guys that seem to be the odds-on favorites, that doesn't hold much water once you take the field. I think back to a couple of rookie running backs. One was drafted, one wasn't. One was a third-round pick at Ohio State, and the other was a undrafted free agent out of Illinois. And that undrafted free agent from Illinois happened to be Pierre Thomas.
Sure.
And despite the fact that on paper it seems like he had no shot to even make the roster, he went out there and proved that he was the better candidate and deserved that roster spot and starting job. So it's the same for Carson and Dwan in that, on paper you may be the underdog, but you get out there and you perform and play well. I don't think coaches disregard that. I think this is about as close to a true meritocracy as it comes when you come to athletics, in that the better man should and usually does get the job. So keep working, keep honing your craft, and even if you're not the starter, as we've seen across the board, thinking Nick Foles a few years back, he wasn't the starter, ends up being a Super Bowl winner and leads his team to victory. So you got to stay ready, you got to stay hungry, and be prepared for when that opportunity comes your way.
Staying ready, being hungry, and being prepared, part of the recipe that UGA hopes to use this season to win the East for a fourth consecutive year. It's our only East season preview series, part of DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door, and also here as a part of our Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update. John going to be good enough to be with us all week, looking at running backs, wide receivers, diving into the Georgia defense. John, thanks for being with us today, and we'll look forward to speaking to you back here again tomorrow as well.
Always enjoy it, BA. Go Dogs.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
I think you're going to really like that from John Stinchcomb this week. Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update there. We normally hear from him on Mondays, but it's deep dive on running backs tomorrow, receivers later in the week. Look at the defense a little bit more. It's going to get really interesting with the defense, because one of the things we'll talk to John about later in the week on that is, just how is it that Georgia truly does live up to the hype? Because let's face it, there's a level of praise this Georgia defense has gotten during the offseason that's not easy to match. Well, how does Georgia put itself in the best position to match that and live up to all of those expectations? John's going to be good on that before we're done this week. Let's transition now. Let's do an SEC Through. We'll keep our Own the East theme going here. We previewed Florida last week, Tennessee last week. Let's get deeper on South Carolina right now, and this is a game that Georgia needs to win because you want to dominate your East Division opponents, but probably wants to win a little bit more because, admittedly, Gamecocks came to Athens and beat UGA a season ago. One of the biggest stories for South Carolina, and I would say one of the bigger stories in the SEC this year, is the presence of Mike Bobo, the new South Carolina offensive coordinator. I think of Bobo as a very good offensive coordinator. I think his final year at Georgia speaks for itself. In 2014, Dogs led the SEC in scoring that year, more than 40 points per game. Bobo, I think, gets a lot of credit for that, especially given all the injuries that Georgia dealt with at the running back position, given the situation at quarterback where maybe Hudson Mason wasn't necessarily the guy you initially thought you'd see there in that spot. But the offense hummed right along. Bobo got a lot of credit for that, justifiably. Now he's back in the SEC running the offense for Will Muschamp in South Carolina. How does he pair with Ryan Helinski? And is this a setup for a 2022 quarterback like Gunnar Stockton, assuming that Muschamp and everyone else there holds on to their job, to want to go and be a part of what Bobo's building there in Columbia? How Bobo works with Helinski will go a long way towards determining that. I do think Helinski's a pretty talented quarterback. I think last season, you didn't always get to see the best of him necessarily for a number of reasons. I would expect that Bobo and Helinski probably do pretty good things with each other. However, ultimately, offensively for South Carolina, those aren't really the biggest questions to deal with. You've got a lot of need for folks to prove themselves at the wide receiver spot right now. Very popular player like Daquan Joyner at one point in time wanted to be a quarterback. He's at receiver now, and I think there's a curiosity about just how quickly he really shows himself to be a valuable commodity there. A player that a lot of Georgia fans may remember from the recruiting trail, Josh Vann, formerly kind of on the Bulldogs' radar as a recruit. This could be the year that he comes into his own as a receiver and gives some targets for a guy like Helinski to throw to. That's a big part of the story for South Carolina. But ultimately, what's even more important than that, and one of the reasons why I think that South Carolina has underachieved most of the last couple of years, even with beating Georgia a year ago, the last couple of years relative to expectations have been pretty rotten for South Carolina. I think the reason for that's pretty simple. Gamecocks have just not been very good at running the football. Well, South Carolina got one of the biggest wins in that regard on the recruiting trail that it has gotten or could have gotten with the 2020 class when Marshawn Lloyd announced his pledge to the Gamecocks, and he's now a part of that offense. And I think just given the unsettled, uncertain, really unproven level of running back that returns to the program with experience, I think Marshawn Lloyd's going to be given a huge chance there to be the featured back for that Gamecocks offense this year. And Mike Bobo showed you in 2014 that he's more than willing to run the football. The idea of run the ball Bobo, that may have been a meme around Georgia at one point in time, but Bobo ran it plenty for Georgia as offensive coordinator in 2014. At the goal line against South Carolina is an example of a time when he didn't. Georgia fans will remember that. But ultimately, I don't think Bobo has any problem using Marshawn Lloyd. And if Lloyd becomes the kind of SEC workhorse running back that South Carolina has not had, then fortunes could be changed for the Gamecocks offensively. On the defensive side for a moment, it's who's not there anymore that probably matters. Javon Kinlaw was one of the most dominant players in the SEC in 2019. He now has to be replaced. Don't be so quick to assume, though, that this won't be a very good South Carolina defensive line. Once again, ties to Georgian recruiting. You may remember Rick Sandage. Sandage has not had a great career at South Carolina up to this point in time, but if you follow South Carolina message boards during the offseason and things like that, and I try to, I'm always interested in what SEC fans are saying, there's still a belief that Sandage can still be a significant factor for the Gamecocks defense. More so than that, I think folks look at Zach Pickens as a huge win for the Gamecocks in recruiting a couple of years ago, and I think that he's treated, I think rightly so, as a pretty top-flight player. Expect the secondary to be pretty good. The guy that had 3 picks, for instance, against Georgia, he's back again this year. Defensively, obviously a lot to replace in the absence of Kinlaw, but plenty of opportunities to do that. This is a South Carolina team that I would say, if you're looking from a Vegas standpoint, I think wins more games than the experts think. I could see this team going 7-5 this year in the regular season, which is an impossibility if you don't play 12 games. But you get my point. If it's a regular schedule, regular season, I could see this team, finding a way to a winning record, much, much better than the 4-win team from a year ago will make that your SEC through. And we'll keep those Own the East season preview looks going throughout the entirety of our week, looking at the opponents that Georgia will play from the SEC East, eventually looking at the rest of the SEC West, and then finally making some predictions for the league, for the the entirety of the conference. Of course, all of this pending the possibility that we actually do have a season, which around here we're going to keep a good thought and say that we do, that Georgia will be playing, and the SEC is going to be fun one way or another because of that. Tomorrow, a little deeper look at running backs. One of the things we're going to get into in particular is some of what's still out there for James Cook to accomplish. Maybe a guy that less heralded right now than Zamir White, Kendall Milton because he's an incoming freshman. Sometimes people wonder, what is James Cook's role in the Georgia offense going to be? We'll have some fun with that as a part of tomorrow's show. Speaking of fun, I'm going to do the math in my head here. Gator Header Updater, 1,360 days. That's how long since Florida's beaten Georgia. Y'all have a good day. Thanks for being here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door. And on video, just quickly an R.S. Andrews cool down. We're not going to do a ton of R.S. Andrews cool down stuff here this week just because we're not live and I can't take your comments. But I will give you an idea of what the rest of the week is going to look like. It is deeper look at all the Georgia position groups. We'll continue some of this even when I get back into town after vacation. A lot of that with John Stinchcomb the next couple of days. Jeff Sintel with kind of some broad, big picture recruiting stuff. He'll cover that with us. Also, make sure you check it out because I'm the only one from DawgNation who's gone this week. Mike Griffith is still here. Connor Riley's going to be here all week. Jeff Sintel covering recruiting. Their various broadcasts will still be taking place. Their written work at the site, DawgNation.com, that's going to continue to take place. So follow along with what's going on. And hopefully in terms of progression towards the start of the season, we'll get good news on that and plenty of other interesting things as well. So we'll do a lot of that. Of course, I love your comments. Sorry I'm not here to take them here today, but hopefully you've enjoyed the interaction you're having with each other as maybe a part of an R.S. Andrews cool down. So we'll wrap up for today by me reminding you that check out R.S. Andrews for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs, whether it's getting your air conditioning tuned back up to factory fresh specs or getting your water heater replaced or just looking at an electrical or plumbing issue that you might be dealing with. R.S. Andrews can be trusted to do all that kind of stuff. Story after story, they've been delivering smiles. They can put a smile on your face as well, but you've got to find them online at rsandrews.com. You'll have a great day. Thanks for being here. Check out ajc.com for your Atlanta news now. I'm sure plenty going on around the city of Atlanta. Always true. ajc.com will cover you on all of that. And I'll see you back here tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. It won't be live, but it will be broadcast. DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door. We'll look forward to talking to you then, everybody. For more DawgNation videos, check out youtube.com/DawgNation. That go okay?